School District of Weyauwega Fremont Board of Education Committee of the Whole meeting to order on Monday, March 10th, 2014 at 6:31 p.m. in the Weyauwega Fremont Middle School IMC. Roll call on established quorum.
Jim Stibbs.
Yes.
Neil Lurkey.
Here.
Sandy Smith.
Yes.
Doug Ehrenberg.
Here.
Dan Cole.
Here.
3, the meeting was properly notified, everywhere listed below.
Yes.
Number 4, recognition and special guests. 4A, Prudential Spirit of Community Award.
We have one item that's not typical of a committee meeting, but due to some scheduling conflicts, we're very pleased and honored to recognize a student here at the middle school. Recently, one of our middle school students, Maggie, Ollman, was recognized as a recipient of the Prudential Spirit of the Community Award. And Mr. Schrader can take it from here.
All right, Ms. Brace is going to come up and join me in this. This is Maggie Ollman, okay? And I guess just a little bit of background here. Maggie was chosen by a select number of judges for the 2014 Prudential Spirit of the Community Award. She ranks in the top 10% of all students in Wisconsin that applied for this award. One student was given the state honoree. Maggie was like the runner-up to that particular individual. She is an outstanding young lady, always has a positive attitude, does a lot of volunteering activities, looking for always the way to find good in people. Very friendly in the hallways, and I just want to congratulate her very much. But before I hand her the stuff, Ms. Brace would like to say a few comments that she has prepared about some of the specifics.
Wrote them myself. Earlier this year, Maggie applied for the Prudential Spirit Community Award. This award comes from the White House and President Obama. It recognizes students throughout the whole country who have gone beyond their schoolwork by volunteering themselves to bring a positive change in their community and school. Maggie, while she's in middle school here, has organized the Dream Club during her time. She has devoted many hours in raising money for the Humane Society and the Children's Hospital. She decides when to have a meeting. She makes the agenda. She brings the treats. Well, Mom helps out with that. She decides what fundraising we should participate in as a group, and she elicits the help of other girls in the club. Maggie is the president and completely runs the show. No one questions her, not even the vice president. Today, Maggie is being nationally recognized for her outstanding effort, kind heart, and endless dedication. Even though she deals with her own daily health problems, she always has a smile on her face, and is willing to give to others. She's an amazing individual who has a great attitude towards life and others around her. Please join me in recognizing Maggie on this impressive achievement that she did so well.
So Maggie, here's a certificate for you, recognizing you for your appreciation and commitment to strengthening our nation and for making a difference through volunteer service. I realize that I don't hold a candle in the wind for President Obama, but I just want to say I'm very proud of you and all you do for our school and for our community. Keep up the great work.
If there's any money in there, you're sharing it.
Congratulations. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
And just to follow up, board members and community, Angie wrote just a spectacular article that was in the Weyauwega County Post-West last week, explaining further in detail of the accomplishments of Maggie and her contributions. So I'm sure it's online, and check it out if you wish. So, tremendous young lady. Thank you.
5, Board Policy and Youth Service. 5A, Board Policy number 345.2, Student Progress Reports to Parents.
Board members that like to present for consideration as we move through the 300 series, some potential adjustments. The first to policy 342 or 345.2, which addresses progress reports to parents. The administrative team had met and discussed bringing this policy up to speed with what's happening not only around our area and area districts, but with the advancement of technology and the access to technology that the majority of our school community stakeholders now have, we look at making a change. Just for referencing, the yellow language is identified as potential removing, and the green items would be of potential insert of new verbiage into the discussion. The admin team may feel free to contribute from their perspective as well as we get into it. The first part in the 345-2 would be striking out, in addition, progress reports shall be communicated no less than one time each quarter. Additional progress reports should be sent. The student's progress takes a major decline and indicates failure to reach the benchmark. As we know, and board members know, and our school committee knows, we utilize the Skyward grading system, which is electronic. It can be accessed on a daily basis, and many parents and students are actively looking at their grades. I think it would be advantageous to our district that if we would move to working with parents to notify, continually look at these mid-quarter reports, on a daily basis, not just during the mid-quarter time frame. And that would allow, that transparency to continue and project almost a real-time grade reporting, which would be going on throughout the quarter and or semester. Two other items for consideration. The board would encourage its parent guardians to be actively involved in students and academic behavior monitoring. Okay, as well, making that statement, parents, guardians should be that active part to support their child, and we entrust them to become part of this monitoring process, which they are entitled to and should be investing time into, as well as parent guardians may request a printed hard copy of midterm progress reports if not able to access information via a technology platform. Understanding that not all individuals may have technology where they could access the online grades and progress reports. So if there would be a family or an individual that would still like the hard copy form, upon request, we would gladly send that piece to them so that they could have it in hard copy form. I know, gentlemen, Candy, I don't know if there's any additional comments to this. There was one further conversation about notification of grades, and if a student is failing, how will that parent potentially know? So I'll let you guys handle that piece if you would like.
If a student is failing, it is the responsibility of the teacher to be in contact with the parents. And that is something, perhaps there could be some language developed as far as the responsibility with the teacher. But as I see it, and I think Mr. Nowak and I are in agreement on this, that is a daily responsibility to notify teachers notify parents when a student is not performing as he or she ought to be within the classroom. And from what I've seen in my time here, I have noticed a fairly good job of teachers reporting and calling parents. Even to the fact I had one parent comment to me, "You call too much." So that just tells me that they're doing their job and making sure that information is being reported out as needed. But for peace of mind, if that's something we want to write in a language as far as the teacher's responsibility, I can see that very easily done.
Yeah, I would agree with Mr. Schrader. The teachers in the elementary, if a student isn't reaching a benchmark, they're reaching out to the families long before this policy would even, if we had to put that in there, long before that it would even be necessary. So when Jeremy said it could be added, I'm not 100% sure it would need to be, but if it gives people peace of mind, it should be. Teachers are always encouraged to reach out.
I guess I talked to Mr. Buck about that today. I guess if you guys, I'd like to see something in there, just in case somebody did, if that ever happened, that you can't say, well, you didn't tell me.
Right. Yeah.
So it's all right. I guess if you guys are okay with it.
Is that in the teacher's handbook?
Is it or is it?
It's part of the teacher effectiveness program that we're using through Cesa 6. There's a minimum amount of contact that the staff has to have with the parents, and that's a minimum bar, and we're seeing a lot more above it, just like what Jeremy's saying, the feedback that we usually get is too much.
Through their documentation log updates, they actually have to log the contacts and times and so forth. So that's something that, as we visit with our staff, we are able to see that. And if it's presented that there aren't contacts here, we would be having that discussion at that point because it's required.
Okay.
But to answer your question, it could potentially become part of their handbook if need be. I don't recall if there's some specific language now without looking at it.
Yeah, 'cause pretty hard to specify.
Well, I mean-
Once a week, once a
Right.
month. Yeah.
I just don't want a parent coming and say, well, nobody
Nobody told
they
me.
get shocked at your
Yep.
cars.
Right.
And I, like, it probably doesn't happen, but, I guess,
Notification of, to,
if you're okay with it.
I think notification of parent guardian if a child is failing should be mandatory, you know, you're making that call, and that typically is happening, but that solidifies the direction.
And I think, you know, we do a good job here. I think we even tend to raise the bar higher, and not even just with the failing students, but those generally struggling. You know, a student that you know is capable of much more than perhaps C, and is not showing a full potential within the classroom might be reaching out. You know, and likewise, I will go on the flip side of it. Even if a student is doing very well, I know I encourage, and I'm sure Mr. Nowak, you know, make those calls, because not too often do you hear the positive things. You know, that's just the ways of the world, unfortunately. Communication is something we really stress all the time.
I did like this, that you're going to have a printed copy, because not everybody does have a computer. Will parents understand that? How will they be told that? I mean, they aren't going to read the policy books, so.
Sure, and that's something we can communicate during the registration process at the beginning of the school year. You know, in our discussion as an admin team, that's kind of what I brought up. I think it'd be the most easily communicated. It could be published in the registration materials. Because let's face it, I mean, technology, we have a great technology system, but at times it could fail. We want to make those things accessible to those that need it. So.
I think
That's the thing, catch everybody.
Yep.
I mean, everybody's paying close attention to their school-related items. They're coming back, they're looking at all the different pieces that they, forms that they're signing, and emergency forms that they're updating. That's just another piece that they would have.
I do know from my own grandchildren that they go online almost every day and look at their
Oh,
grades, so.
yeah. Well, that's
It's
becoming
great.
the online grading, I believe, is really becoming a powerful tool for, it really, the school and home connection is,
But
getting
then again,
stronger.
there are parents that do not have that. Thank you.
So we would bring back, potentially at our next committee meeting, something that would, identify that notification piece, and build that in, take that out a second look if we're comfortable with that. Any of the other verbiage, comments on that first one?
I have some questions. I think all of the green stuff that's being added makes sense. Much of the yellow that's being removed is kind of a housekeeping, wordsmithing kind of thing. I do not understand why we would delete the sentences that are yellow. If we are giving progress reports more often than once a quarter, then why would we delete the sentence that says progress reports shall be communicated no less than once a quarter? It just seems to me like it sets a minimum bar. Same with the next sentence. Additional progress reports should be sent. I think that these two sentences are minimum bars. I can't fathom why we would delete the minimum. If you're already going higher than that, leave them in there. That's my thoughts. The third sentence on the page that says administrative guidelines for promotion or retention of students shall be maintained, reviewed at least once every 3 years. Is there such a administrative guideline for promotion or retention currently?
Where are you, Mr. Murphy?
Well,
Because we're on 345.2. We're just doing the first one right now.
Okay, I thought we were doing all the pages.
No, but I was just looking at the first one there.
All right,
That's coming, so that's fine.
I was putting them all in a group.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, I do.
Sure, go for it.
As far as your one time, I know that's something that Mr. Nowak and I, talked about at length. That language references the printed copies.
Okay.
It may not to perhaps those that read it, if they read the policy, but if you leave that in there as is, what it's saying is right now that they will communicate one time with a printed copy as I read it. We would no longer have the printed copies unless specifically requested, which could be at that one time minimally per quarter. If I read it correctly.
I guess I don't interpret that as a written copy.
That's what it was, though. I mean, we'd send out.
And you're going to eliminate those?
No.
Yeah,
Printed
and then
copies unless
encourage people to
specifically
go to the
requested.
online portion, and then in the beginning of the year, if people, when they register, prefer a hard copy, they can make that notation that they want the mid-quarter hard copy. That's what I would consider At this point in time, kind of the industry standard right now is going to be electronic reporting.
Number 5 does say there will be a midterm progress report. Am I right?
Now which page are you on?
Maybe
I'm on
request.
the same one, 345.2.
After talking to Mr. Buck this afternoon, were you guys, your experience where you came from, you didn't have it. Found it was unnecessary.
Yep.
I guess that's why we found it.
Okay, and I know as a parent,
I had a question.
I get written progress reports, and I like that. Then I can sit down with the children and do it, we don't have to crowd on this computer screen.
And that's something you could still request.
You can request it.
It's not totally going by the wayside. You could request that during your registration process of your children. Say, look, I would really prefer to have the hard printed copies once per quarter. And that still would be accommodated.
And potentially this could be the alternative, request to be electronic instead of request to be print. It's just a matter of how you want to do this.
Well,
Print the
that
hard
would be
copy.
really difficult because then when it comes to printing right now, how they do it is they print off every student, every class at once.
Okay?
Now, if I understand it right, with our system, you'd have to go in and click on every student you want to print versus the ones that would request electronically, like you're saying. So then, with the alphabetization and sorting to have them ready to go, I think would become a little bit more cumbersome.
Well, and
I'm not an expert at this.
Yeah.
My opinion would be, I would send out like like you have, and in there say, if you want this discontinued, notify us. And it would be discontinued, same as I can opt out of all the other paper stuff that I might want to opt out of. So it's a matter of, should we by default stop it and
Yeah.
require a
Yep.
request, or should we by default give it
Yeah.
and request out?
Yeah.
That's my discussion.
And I can see it either way.
Yeah,
Either way
I prefer the other
accomplishes
one
the same
personally.
means, you know?
In other words, don't change me unless I ask to be changed. That's my thought.
You can have both options there.
Yeah, you have both.
I want my material
So
sent
they're left it
electronically,
open.
I want it sent.
Sure.
I mean,
So I
Well-
guess you still have the option.
And I'm gonna speak
No
for
matter which
myself.
one becomes the default.
I'm encouraging that the parents get used to using the electronic form. Because they, I think like you said, your grandson or whatever, if they're getting used to using the electronic form, they being the parents, will have a tendency to probably go on their weekly or daily, and with their own mouse click, they can have their own hard copy. Because you can print them. So you'll have, I mean, it breaks it right down to what assignment you've got, 87 out of 100 on. I mean, that literally, that homework assignment or that test, I mean, the data mining is much greater using the electronic version than the hard copy that you could send. We'd send reams of hard
Yeah.
copy to give the people what they can get electronically. So it's a matter of encouraging families to use this method, because in the long run, or even the short run, I think they're going to be getting more information that's useful and more of a timely information.
I'm gonna ask,
If you don't mind, just one more thing.
Oh, sure.
Let's try to imagine you being the parent, you checked your child's homework, and something kind of red flags you a little bit. While you're right there on the computer, it gives you a good opportunity to open that email, send the teacher an email and say, Mr. Schrader, so-and-so, we missed 20 points on this test, never happened before. I'm a little concerned. Can you help me understand what's going on? Probably within less than a day, you'll have an answer to your question, and there's that dialogue that's going.
I totally agree. When we started this, it seemed to me that like there was a computer in the school that parents could use.
I
And
believe
sort
we
of
did
get
offer.
some training in that.
We had
And
some training or
I would-
in-service during
I'm just-
parent-teacher
That might
conferences
be a thing to offer once again.
to bring back up.
We do typically during parent-teacher conferences, a lot of the teachers will have their computers open or their laptops open, and they can actually show the parents how to navigate, because like Mr. Nowak was saying, right now that progress report just lists the grades and potentially a sentence worth of a comment about that particular grade. But within the Skyward system, you click on, okay, if it's Mr. Black's social studies class, you click on that grade, that opens it up, you see everything that tallied to make that letter grade. And from moving forward then, parents can always see that. And they can request right at the office, like I've had a couple parents come in, through extended families and so forth, not sure how to do that, we show them right in the office, whether I do or one of, like Mrs. Lurkey or whoever, we'll show them exactly how to do it and give them the password, the login information, everything.
And I guess I still lean towards the suggestion that we duplicate if necessary, leave it like it is with the alternative opt-out. 2 years from now, a parent comes to the school district, doesn't know there was a paper thing 2 years back, doesn't know they can ask for one. Or should they get one and say, we can opt out of it? It's a matter of which way you want to present it. I would prefer keeping the duplicate arrangement, letting them opt out. I think you're going to have better communication with parents by default. Whereas the other way, you're going to have less communication by the parent by default, and they have to opt in. That's just my way of looking at it.
I guess my biggest concern with the whole thing is the day of age we're in, and I realize that some people don't have access or the comfort factor in doing this. My big fear factor, especially on the high school side, is how many progress reports are intercepted in the mailbox that never get seen by the parents.
This isn't going to help that.
What?
If parents can get online and look at it, they aren't receiving a paper at home that we just spent the money to mail home and they never got it. That's a concern that I have when we put the money out there and they don't receive any of the communication we send.
And which one is the default? I guess I'm in disagreement.
I think as long as you make it clear on the registration form that they can receive it either way.
Yep, absolutely.
Parents are-
It's definitely not something new we're looking at. It's pretty common practice, like Mr. Nowak said, within the school
And any
industry.
new parents coming in would get that same form, so they would know
That's part of the
that it's
registration
either
process.
paper or electronic.
Or they get these quarterly statements and can opt out. Which way you want to do it.
We're still gonna get the written
we gotta-
format at the end of each quarter, so.
You need to move on here. They have the option if you want to.
In the registration.
So you have options. Right. So, I agree with it.
We'd still like to bring back an adjustment on the notification of a failing piece, so we'll bring that back at the April committee meeting to adjust that one. We've got a note on that one to adjust that, and if we want to further discuss that other topic or which way, we can most certainly do that.
Are we on all of these yet, or?
I was gonna go to 345-3, the next page, grade advancement for all students. The next one. The next page. Within that, the admin team, we went through that and we cleaned up some of the existing language with what potentially and not knowing potentially what can come forward. That first bullet point, failure to achieve scored proficient or advanced at the WKCE. Well, we know that this was our last year at the WKCE. Next year it's Smarter Balance, but as we've been communicating, Lord, that Smarter Balance, Common Core, all of that still may be in jeopardy in some sense. So we thought that current state assessment may clarify that. It's kind of a coverall of what could come down the road in front of us. The third bullet point, failure to achieve student-specific target growth as noted on NWA MAP assessment. That's just cleaning up the name of that assessment. The 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth bullet point, identifying a grade level as far as 6-8, grade 6-8 failure to achieve passing grades in a year-long class, year-long course subject, course, reading, language arts, math, and or social studies. And then again, identifying K-5, saying that there are those standards between K-5 and 6-8. Typically in high school, it's the credit attainment, so it doesn't necessarily apply. The student must pass the class to earn the credits towards graduation. And then the final paragraph, just cleaning up the word, they had an N instead of an M representing the word team on that piece of the puzzle.
You want to add a GR in front of that 6-8 on bullet point 5?
Great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, grades K-5 are good.
There's somewhere to specify that it's a grade, not
Yeah.
some other numbers.
On the next page, and I think this is where you had your question, Mr. Murphy, on that, in the, I'll call the first, second, to third paragraph, eliminating the two words in that final sentence, administration retains the right to evaluate attendance cases on an individual basis, just cleaning it up, if you will. And then the final sentence that was to to be struck through administrative guidelines for promotion retention of students shall be maintained and reviewed at least once every 3 years. You know, our policy process in which we've engaged into, I'm not certain if that happens once every 3 years. And I think, you know, within this team, if there are processes that need to be brought forward for consideration, we would most definitely do that if there was something that needs to be brought to the board's attention.
This is a sentence in the current policy.
Correct.
For promotion, retention, review, that is or has not been done.
We review them, I don't know if
happens
it's,
more frequently.
I don't know, I don't know if the board has reviewed it on a every 3-year process.
Obviously not, because it's
Right,
2000.
The sentence says administrative guidelines for promotion should remain maintained, reviewed at least once every 3 years. My question is it?
Do we annually look at it, or every 3 years? Yes, we're examining this policy as a whole.
Our talking point, I believe, behind this was the fact that we do it more often, but the board policy doesn't get reviewed for updates, so that would eliminate that, you know, that if the policy didn't get reviewed every so often, if it was beyond the 2 or less than 3 years or beyond the 3 years, does that make sense?
If this policy got looked at every 8 years, and there was an administrative guideline that was being maintained and reviewed every 3 years, then I think we're covered. But to eliminate the need to administration to do this every 3 years is of what benefit?
Well, we're already doing it, probably an
And
annual
why would we
basis.
delete it from the policy?
If anything, I'd like to see it strengthened, you know, from 3 to 1. Annually it'll be evaluated, if that's the, I mean, if that's the intent.
That makes
that's
more
what-
sense than the deleting it, in my opinion. I don't see the motivation to delete this.
But that has nothing to do with the board.
That's just our continual review of our advancement policy. Are we adhering to it, following through on it, you know, and are things to bring forward for potential adjustments to that?
I haven't heard a good reason to delete this yet.
What are you arguing about?
The yellow sentence is being recommended to delete, and I don't know why.
In
Board,
this,
345.3 on the second page.
If someone can explain to me the reason why it's being requested to be deleted, I'm listening.
We do it what,
Well,
once
I
a
don't know
year?
if this would be, I'll take a shot at it. I don't know if this would be, and I think, and again, I don't wanna speak for everybody else, but it's, you know, now that winter is leaving, everybody's feeling better about winter. This might be a good time to use this analogy, but it's almost like a snowfall in December or January, if you get 12 inches. We don't feel we need to be told that we need to shovel our driveway because we need to shovel our driveway. We don't do it once every 3 years and let the snow pack up. So that, in our world, if you will, we're doing it every year. So leaving it in here, while it doesn't hurt anything,
Good.
its purpose, it seems a little out of place. Because it's like you're going to shovel your driveway. It's just part of the way you do business all the time. I don't know if that's a great analogy or not.
If I shovel my driveway every day, and someone gave me a rule that said I need to shovel it once a month,
Yeah.
I wouldn't ask for that to be deleted.
this is a board
it does,
policy.
this,
But if it was August, you might.
this gets looked at probably every year because there's been since we've been here most of it, there's been attendance issues, there's been other issues that they've had to look at. So it's not like, it does get looked at. It has
So
to.
you want it to go like from once every 3 years to once a year?
I don't know why it's being asked to be deleted, when I'm hearing they'd like to see it be strengthened.
They do.
So deleting it is the opposite of strengthening.
But this is a
Why is it
board
being requested to be
policy.
deleted?
This is instructions for the board.
If there is
No.
an issue, we can change this policy anytime we want.
And right now, there's a request for it to be changed by deletion of this sentence. And I don't understand why we would want it, why the board would want to delete this sentence.
It doesn't even pertain to us, it's administrative.
That's right. So the board has written a policy that says the administration should follow this sentence. They're telling us they do it more often than this.
I'm sure
And then in the same tone, they're asking us to delete the sentence. I don't know why.
they can come anytime, and we can rewrite this policy anytime.
And that's what's on the table right now, is to rewrite this policy, with this being deleted.
It doesn't matter.
So why is it being deleted?
Because it doesn't fit in.
Because it doesn't, they do look at it.
It sounds like they look at it more than once every 3 years.
Well, yes, you look at it
So why
probably
delete
every
it?
year, because you have issues every year. So I mean, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so should it say 1 year, or should it be deleted?
Should we delete it because it
If there's a
doesn't?
problem with it and they have a problem with it, they can bring it back to us and we can work on it.
It doesn't pertain.
It really doesn't pertain to us.
No, it doesn't.
You know, it's not, we're not looking, I know what you're saying. We're not, it doesn't pertain to us, this is administration. Do you want the board to look at it every 3 years?
No.
I know what you're saying,
I'm reading the sentence.
I know, but just.
There's a policy here. The policy reads, "The administrative guidelines for promotion and retention of students shall be maintained and reviewed at least every 3 years." They're saying they do it more often than that. And they're also recommending that we delete this. That doesn't make sense.
It's not, to me, it's not something the board does and board policies that we do.
Yeah, we don't set the, they
What
bring
the
it to us,
administrative-
they set the guideline. For promotion, retention, completion, blah, blah, blah. So I mean, we, to me, we're arguing about, it doesn't matter.
Would you like this to be deleted, or would you like it to be strengthened, or left like it is? That's the three
If there's
choices.
There's not a need for it, delete it.
Yeah, there's not a need for it. They look at it every year.
And if the policy said do it at least every 3 years, you delete it, and then the potential is that they don't ever have to look at it again because it's not in policy.
They have to look at it
Well,
every
if it
year when
wasn't-
they retain a
if
child.
Would you take it out?
We haven't looked at this policy, the board hasn't looked at this policy since 2008.
Exactly.
So it'd be, here's 2014. So what's, there hasn't been an issue with it for, what is it, 8 years? 6 years, 7 years? 8 years, going on 8 years, so what's the big,
And if the policy has said the administration needs to do this, and they're asking for it to be removed, why?
It's the consensus.
what's the consensus? It don't matter.
I get rid of it, it doesn't fit in.
It doesn't
there.
fit in there anyway, get rid of it. There, done. We win.
345, 3B.
Was that all of them? I'm sorry, the administrative procedure? Again, cleaning up the language, recognizing WKC testing, noting that that's not going to be part of our configuration, simplifying the current state assessment, and then cleaning up the NWEA map assessment, and so on and so forth. The verbiage down, the D and the A, Candy was saying that it should be highlighted just for schematics on district administrator, not that I need it or whatnot, as far as how it's listed out, so that's why that was highlighted.
Is there still going to be the writing sample?
There's portions of the WKC that still exist, the science and the social studies, the English language arts and the reading and the math will all be online. We believe the writing sample will be with that, but we have not seen that yet.
That's why I wondered if you wanted to get that in there. What do you have attended school at least 85% of the year? We know some kids have illnesses and that. Explain that. Can you explain that to me a little bit?
What was your question, you're saying?
Attendance, have attended school at least 85.
Oh.
This is just some of the criteria
Yeah.
you use. It
Yep,
doesn't
some of the
necessarily
things
say.
that- Yep.
Okay, I got it. Thanks.
Onto the backside, 345, the grade advancement, again recognizing the WKC gone, current state assessment, and then getting rid of the word must, and just simply state the statements that are following, addressing each one of those individual items, because there is some flexibility that goes into, that advancement. It's a team decision along with the parents as to what that must happen, or how that must happen.
In those last 2 pages, thank you, cleaning up from a wordsmithing standpoint with the current standing statute. Appreciate it.
improvements through the welfare 6A, youth option requests.
Board members for review, Mr. Schrader's going to excuse himself and go up to the high school for a concert that's going on at this time. We have two applications for consideration in conversation this afternoon. You'll note the extensive credit attainment that is being recognized with the individuals, and I want to assure the board that the individuals will not be taking excess of 4 or 5 classes. Typically, at the very most, it's 1 or 2, and the reason for the multiple classes is if the ones that they want to go to aren't running, or they don't are filled, or a schedule change, or conflicts with the ability to get to where they need for the youth options classes. So they would potentially take 1 and or 2 of the classes in their selection. This would be for the fall of 2014, fall of 2014. Look for potential approval at the March board meeting.
Would this be an Appleton or Weyauwega?
It varies. It doesn't stay. I'm guessing it looks like some of the classes, which they are the welding and the technique classes, that it would probably be at the Appleton campus, but I'm not 100% certain. They do have some, obviously, at the Weyauwega campus as well. I don't know if they're equipped with the equipment there as they are in Appleton.
I'm all for it. If you don't provide it, they should be able to find it.
I agree.
Can I ask how students know about this?
It's typically a process that's communicated through the guidance department and the classroom instructor. In this case here, it appears to be some tech ed instructional classes, and working with those high flyers, that have exceeded the curriculum within that coursework, and they say, hey, what can I do next? It's that teacher that's prompting, promoting, how they can further, along with the guidance.
The reason I asked is I was telling a parent about it and didn't know. Is that in our handbook or anything?
I believe it's in the course description book, Youth Options.
Sure,
Is
and
it?
families are required to meet with the guidance counselors their freshman year and also their junior year. Freshman year, they're supposed to kind of draw out a 4-year plan for their classes, and then junior year, they start getting really specific, and this is when they start taking these classes that are going to tie into their major. Not every family chooses to attend that, but they're supposed to go to both.
No, I think it's great. I really do. I just wondered how to do it.
Sure. That's typically how it's communicated.
Thanks.
7, finance operations, 7A, long-range facility planning proposals.
Following up from our meeting in February when we had Bray Architects and ATS&R present their proposals for our potential long-range facility planning process, I've communicated with the board that question about the community engagement piece and how it was weighed into their final cost to our district. I don't know if there's any additional questions on with that, but I think tonight's intent was that there were any other follow-up questions or discussion amongst the board, and kind of direct what our next step potentially could be at the end of March here at our monthly meeting.
I read it as $15,000 bid with a $3,555 reimbursable expenses. I'm assuming those are added to make $18,555.
Correct. That would be as needed, right?
And then on their next page, they must have rounded to between 5. Is that how that came about? Or why
Well,
is it-
that's Bray Architects. The first one
I
is
take it back.
ATS&R.
I
The
take it
second
back.
one is Bray. Correct.
All fees are negotiable. I know I was asked to have our law firm go from 30-some thousand down to 12 in negotiations, and I was wondering if this has been negotiated or going to be.
Not at this point. Not at this point. We had no direction to negotiate beyond our presentation. The question was to whether or not the rates would be reduced if we didn't do the community engagement piece. ATS&R said they would back off $3,000 if they didn't do the community engagement piece, and Bray said they would back off $1,500 from their fee. Both firms wanted to state, although they recognized that, they both stated that that piece is critical in their eyes as to gauging what our community is feeling about our facilities and giving them their voice as well. If something potential comes out of it where the community is needed to support or be knowledgeable of, I think they'd like to have that input up front.
I think the question I had with both of their presentations was, and I asked Scott to ask him a question about the community engagement piece for the one, said that they would take the money back if they didn't do it, and the other one didn't say anything, so he asked that, and they said that they would. I feel it's important too, however, I was thinking more along the lines of letting one of these companies, if we so choose, to come in and give their assessment, because this is what they do, this is their profession, before they involve the community in, we might have a bias from community engagement as far as to, oh, we need this and this, versus them coming in by themselves first and assessing our facilities, and then possibly going out to the community and saying, what do you think? But
I think I felt the same way. I felt that if they would come in and then, you know, if it looks like we want to do something, then we should certainly contact the union. But I really, I would drop that to start with, because they could always add it on.
Right. My one conversation with ATS&R stated that as they go through this process, it's in their particular billing cycle, they don't charge $15,000 right off the bat and then they go do the work. They bill out as the job or task is completed. So as one task is completed, well then that piece of the puzzle gets paid out accordingly. So through that puzzle, and if we're at a point where, well, we really do want that community piece, well then it's added on at that time or however it's configured.
Because right now, I don't think we see any major things. We're looking at boilers, right, and things like that. So, you know, if all of a sudden they say, wow, I think we should then hey, wait a minute, we've got to get community involvement in here. I don't know that people would want to come and hear about a boiler. Maybe they wouldn't. They're welcome to come.
I guess that goes, how in depth do you want to go?
Right.
You just want to do a maintenance thing? Do you want to do a thing where we can reconstruct school, new classrooms? Do we need I don't know if we need an energy audit.
Sure. You know, I think those are all puzzle pieces that should be looked at
Yeah.
within that potential bid price, because we don't do this very often.
No.
You know, and I think that let's look at that, you know, educational configuration, you know, how we have our layout of our classrooms within the alignment within their buildings, you know, our science lab meeting what other districts and what education is telling us we should have to meet the need. I think that would be a valuable piece to have part of that outside of just the maintenance and the internal mechanisms of our district.
I was impressed with that presentation. You know, not saying, not building. We
No,
have the-
right.
To me, my personal opinion only, we have the buildings.
Right.
You know, maybe we can reconfigure in some way to make them more usable to the community and to the school.
Do you want us to tell you who we want?
Well, no decision will be made today, but I know that in our conversations that if one or the other is leading it, I could have that draft copy requested tomorrow, and then I could communicate it to the board, and if appropriate, the potential decision could be made in 2 weeks at our meeting. Would you like to? I don't think it's fair to send out, I want both contracts from either of them. You know, we'd have to come to a consensus, which one you'd like to see, you know. Ultimately, you wouldn't have to accept it. It's just, okay, yep, this is where we're at.
We may be interested.
We may be interested. We'd like to see your contract proposal outside of what you've already presented.
You know her opinion?
What's that?
You want an answer?
Well, if it's Bray or ATS&R, I guess would be the.
ATS&R, I think, 'cause they work within.
That was the one with the woman. That's not my bias, because there's a
Yeah.
woman there, but I like the presentation.
I like their presentation, what they've done in schools. And I think faster the better, because if something has to be done, you've got somebody to do it.
Right.
So,
I'm going on that one.
Any interest in the all fees negotiable portion, to where there's discussion of whether you want community or not community? What if you could do community for the price, for the same price? That's the negotiation part.
Well,
Is that
now
something
give
we're
us
gonna?
a- Isn't our best
I
offer.
think so.
When anyone gives me a bid that says all fees are negotiable, when I don't negotiate, I feel like I missed the boat.
Yeah, but like you said, it's what you get, you kind of tell them what you want.
I could bring that forward to him, all right, where we consider we want a, a draft contract, but
There's some on the fence about community or not community. Is that $1,500?
that's a $3,000 piece with the ATS and R.
The $3,000 ticket.
Yep.
But like,
I think there'd be less discussion about community or no community if the $3,000 was included in the bid.
well,
That's the negotiation part, in my opinion.
I think like Mr. Flex said, you do that and then they come, and then you don't give them the $15,000.
No.
They bill as they go.
Correct.
If we decide to include it
Yeah.
later on.
I think at some point we will. It's just-
Yeah.
But we need something.
But do you negotiate before this happens, or do you negotiate after or during? I think if it says all fees negotiable, you negotiate upfront. That's my opinion.
Wouldn't hurt to ask.
I could definitely propose it and say, hey, you know what, we're really interested, but we're still a little far apart. We need to sharpen the pencil here
Yeah.
and see what comes forward.
They kind of, I suppose they don't know if they can't break it down, like when they came with the proposal, they did that. They don't know until they get,
Until they get here, right, until they dive
maybe it
in.
won't be 15 when they get done.
I would be pretty confident if they bid it at 15,000, it won't be less.
Do you have any trust in them?
That's your experience.
And I would negotiate before, not during or after.
I would tell them, we
Right, I can have that conversation with them. We're sitting on the fence here and we're leaning. This is your final chance to make this happen for us. If you're comfortable with that, and see what comes of it.
And if there's a
And if you want
a
just
name,
this tape, we'll know what
I
we're
got the
doing.
letter, ATSNR.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
Are the two
Yep.
choices that I saw.
So you're gonna go with it?
ATS and R, and I'll give them a call.
And again, if they gave us the card to play about negotiation, I'd play.
Get with the paper, see what it's on. Just look at it that way. You want a cheap version or you want an expensive, or a good version?
So why don't we give them a $10,000 bonus then? We should get more.
Wow, geez.
Anything else on that?
No.
But you are going there.
Yep, I'll have that conversation.
7B, district audit firm 3-year proposal.
At the February committee meeting, the board authorized the bid waiver to negotiate with Erickson to see where their potential 3-year agreement would come back at. The numbers are presented for board members to look at. It does follow suit with the $300 increase per year, with the exception of 15, 16, and where it was $400 per year. I think this is within reason of what was trending from past. We'd look to bring that forward for formal recommendation at the end of the month if there were no questions. I know, Mr. Stewart, you had contact with Abe from Erickson as well. Is there any other talking points that were brought about, or?
Well, I think it's pretty standard. The relationship with Erickson has been very strong, and they've been instrumental in helping me get adjusted here in both of the districts. So I see no reason not to move forward.
One thing I'd like to point out on it's the last page, but it's the second to last page, if that makes sense, where it has the cost from the contract. There's also a portion in there called the membership, if required. And what that signifies, not every year, but this past year, I believe we had a membership audit, and where the state will tell us that we have to complete an internal audit of different components of our district. It could be our student count, or it could be within food service, wherever we are processing funds accordingly. And to do that, we cannot internally carry out that audit ourselves. We have to purchase a firm to come in and complete that audit. That's what that 2550, 2700 represents, the cost to do that singleton audit if needed.
You've never done that.
We have. Last spring, I believe we did one. We got requested by the DPI to do an attendance one, or
I think I've probably stated my issues on this, so I'm just gonna probably try to get them up again. We have a policy that if it's over $10,000, it goes to be a sealed bid. if that was done, and there was 3 sealed bids in this, and this person was high, medium, or low, we still could have a discussion whether it was warranted to do this. What I don't understand is why we aren't doing the 3 sealed bids. What does it hurt? Keeps people honest. If they are high, medium, or low, we can still consider the value and pay the high, medium, or low price. But to just go into this and say we're not going to do a sealed bid because we like these people, I think is not being transparent to our taxpayers. That I think 3 sealed bids over 10,000 is a policy, and it should be followed.
Then within that policy, Mr. Leckie, we need to eliminate the bid waiver component so that we don't use that as an option, because that is part of the policy.
And I understand there is a bid waiver component, and I think it's being used as a crutch more often than necessary.
You're right here, 2010 11, first year they came was $13,000.
It's $200 difference for these 3 years compared to the last 3 years.
So I mean, when they came here, if you get a new firm in here, it's gonna cost you more, because they're not familiar.
So we gotta start over.
That's why it cost us $13,000 the first year, and only $10,800 the second.
And had there been
And we're still under, you go through 2015, 16, they're still under the 13,000.
and had we had 3 sealed bids, that would probably be crystal clear.
Wow.
And what would it hurt?
Well, two years ago, when you were asked to negotiate with Mr. Gill on the attorney fees, did we get 2 other bids on that as well? I mean, you talked to Greg, and you did, or Scott, I'm not sure, but, and then they came back and lowered it from 30,000 to 35,000 to 12,000.
For the amount of money that we go through, like $9 million, $10 million, $11,000. Our township pays $6,000 a year, and we operate on about $400,000 budget. So I mean, this, according to that, this isn't bad.
And my
That's-
discussion has
that's
nothing to
my-
do with price. It has to do with procedure.
But as was pointed out, the waiver is part of that policy.
And I told you my opinion on that.
Do that?
Yep, at the end of the month, potential approval if the board majority sees it appropriate.
7C.
Spring summer technology purchase recommendations. If you remember back to November, we presented the fall winter technology purchase recommendations and brought them forward for informing the board of the direction that we were looking at. And at that time, we said we'd like to bring forward in the spring kind of the same philosophy, generated a little more detail and specificity as to what we're looking at for this summer. Many of these items will not happen overnight, but we need to start discussion as to what we're looking at and communicating out some of the potential costs and what it means to us within our district to complete. Tony is with us this evening, and his insight will be asked as well as we move through. The first is the computer replacement bid waiver potentially for 2015, and what we're looking at is we are looking at potentially replacing all of the, what I'll call the non-lab workstations, like behind you have a computer lab fitted with computers. Non-lab workstations would be classroom teachers, secretarial positions, administrative office, basically wherever there's a computer that is being utilized within our district, support staff, parapro. They're on a rotation, and Tony's at 5 years, a 5-year rotation in which that they cycle down, those computers then make their way into different labs, become part of our part inventory to support the existing computers within our district. Noted, okay, we're looking at anywhere between 95 and 120 computers. And the reason for the variance is this. As we go through our campus and look at each of those identified workstations, there may not be a need for a computer at a certain workstation anymore. Where if a classroom teacher is not in a certain area where they were 5 years ago, there may not be a need one in that present configuration. So that's why there's the range of that. I believe, Tony, we had about 120 anticipated, but it could be less than if identified through the process. The potential estimate cost between $600 and $900 per unit, depending on the volume pricing and the standards, the configurations of each computer that are brought into it. And as I had mentioned, that the old computers would be cycled into labs, lab computers would be cycled out, reconfigured, and potentially brought forward for the sale to our community as we've done in the past with the cycling down of computers. Comments or questions on that? To complete this process, okay, which we're starting to put on, we're going to talk about this several times, but I want the board to be aware of it. And when we do go into this process, you know, later on we're going to talk about potential technology within the Fremont Elementary Lab, and I want to demonstrate what came forward and some of my dissatisfaction with what came forward as far as the pricing. But again, utilizing that process potentially to identify what this number could be.
So item 1, if I'm interpreting this right, is a request for a bid waiver.
It would
A blanket bid waiver.
It would come to a bid waiver in the sense that we would electronically bid out the technology, you know, that between 95 and 120 computers as we did in the past. Tony would circulate the bids to the varied firms that would potentially give us a bid, yes.
And I guess the request to take out the bid waiver option, or maybe we should take out that we don't have a request, 3-bid request. The two extremes. But this is a $57,000 to a $108,000 bid based on these numbers I've got. And to ask for a bid waiver on that, I think is unnecessary.
It's only because it's electronic and they're not following the regular.
It's electronic versus.
Right, the electronic version is that Tony's requesting to his vendors that within a day are giving him an electronic bid back.
How many vendors, Tony?
There's five vendors involved.
What did we have in our other?
The other one's probably more than that.
We had seven people bid back on our other computer project that was up to come here.
I think there's many schools that have a 3-bid request, 3 sealed bid requests. Are they all getting bid waivers? Or are there firms that will provide sealed bids if they're asked? I haven't seen any proof that there's not possible to get 3 sealed bids.
We're getting bids. All they're asking for is the 3 sealed bids. He just told you we're gonna get 5 bids, correct, roughly. So we are still getting bids. All he's asking for is doesn't have to be 3 sealed bids. We're still getting bids.
Over the last 2 years, we tried 3 times in order to have a sealed bid process, and we wound up with none of them participating, which made everything get delayed a lot longer.
I remember that.
They're all set up for electronic bidding.
So it means we are still getting bids. All he's asking for is a waiver to not do it online.
On
You
sealed,
seal them and
the
it's
no
sealed
more
mailed
sealed
in
bid.
bid, right?
So you're still getting bids.
Still getting bids,
On each of these?
correct.
So I mean, we're not,
Because you always give us a sheet comparing them, right?
Yes. And you'll see that later on today.
the point is I mean,
Bids, just
we're
a
still
different
getting
method.
bids,
Just a different
we're
method.
actually, if you don't wanna, you could take the bid thing out, just do it that, not doing the sealed bid. We're bidding a different way. So either way, you're gonna have to do it.
You should give us a pretty complete report if I remember.
I mean, I could see if you just went to one, but you're gonna get, we've always gotten
5 probably. It'd be nice if they would do their electronic bid, press print, put it in an envelope and mail it.
Exactly right.
They're not,
Exactly.
So why don't you put an envelope in the bids here?
we're arguing about nothing again, because we're still getting bids.
So does this cover this whole part now?
This would cover the part 1 here.
Part one.
This would potentially be a waiver request at the end of at the end of the month there. But I guess I wanted to put out that upgrade to our staff or non-lab workstation computers. It's a project we're looking at into potentially for this spring and summer to carry out. That's number 1. Number 2 is a technology service hours for Novell to support the Microsoft product. And there was a lengthy narrative that I wrote, and I hope that you're able to interpret what I was trying to communicate out. And I'll give you a short rendition of what we're looking at. Right now, our computer platform, okay, and let's call our platform, when we log on to our workstations, there's a managing tool that takes in all that information and directs it into a management platform. And then when we access, okay, email, or we access an internet search, that platform is taking us to different spots within our network to execute the task that we are trying to accomplish. I need to find a Word document from 5 years ago. It's taking us to a different place in our system. So currently, our management platform is Novell. And if you remember, if it was last fall or the end of last summer, there was 2 individuals that came in and were complimenting our district on the use of Novell and how we've used it for the past 6 or 7 years, you know, as an effective tool. And I agree with them, we have. Okay, it's been a tool which has worked for us for this time frame. But much like the industry norm and technology is changing and moving to different places, okay, we've been 2 steps behind watching this from afar, okay. The Microsoft platform has been out there for several years, and we haven't moved towards it because we knew there would be potential expenses to change our system over, okay, and our Novell was still meeting our needs. At the current time, Novell is lagging behind. They're not staying with the Microsoft of the world in creating the most effective platform for our end users, us, okay? For Tony being able to manage the system from within. The Novell platform is losing the support statewide. There's not as many people that are experts in that area. Whereas in Heartland, let's say, or Camera Corner, those are technology firms within our area, they used to have on-staff individuals that could support Novell. Right now, we have one, and it's from Skyward, and the gentleman lives in Madison, okay? And he's our closest guy to help our engineering part of that platform. The Microsoft platform, Camera Corner, Heartland, Skyward, almost everyone has not only 1, but 2, but 3 systems analysts to support the Microsoft platform. So it's what people are using. And I referenced in the narrative that there's 3 districts in our Cesa out of 42 that currently use Novell. All others have that Microsoft platform. So we've definitely seen that it's working. All right, we're saying that yes, this is the direction we should go, and now we're ready to make that move. Now to do that, it's not necessarily a hand-in product when the task is complete. The vast majority of what needs to be accomplished is within Tony and in our infrastructure and our systems engineer development. A team of individuals need to come in and redesign that platform so that it works for our school, okay? And that takes system hours to create that. Individuals coming in, working with Tony, building that platform to get to where we need to be. The end result is with having a new platform, we can run more efficiently. We have better support for our district, better support for Tony, our end users, to utilize the different programs that we have. Our task to build it is that we're going into it with some unknown, okay, and the unknown is how long will it take. Tony has already started the process, but he needs support to complete the remainder of the project, which will encompass purchase of hours from, we're identifying Skyward as our vendor of choice after some investigation of potential hours to support that. So,
Is that in our budget?
hope that made sense. That's within our budget configurations of this year. And we had a meeting last Thursday, it was with Skyward, and we openly shared with them, okay, the potential cost of this, because we're going in, not to say blind, but we're going in 1 step at a time, is that the cost could exceed, okay? It's our goal to bite off small chunks at a time, complete them. Where are we at, okay? Tony, can you take it from here? Do you have the knowledge, skill set to continue it on? Or do we need to purchase more support to take it to the next step? This isn't something that the switch will be flipped in one night. It'll be probably months before it's done. And our end users shouldn't really notice the difference. It's just the internal work that's going with Tony. So is it in our budget? It's in with our configuration of this year, yes.
Time frame, looking at summer months to do this?
Actually, it would start probably relatively quick, before the school year is out, they would start building that
It
platform.
won't interfere with the system.
No,
that we
they
have.
build it within, and then they test it from within, and then they send it out to individual users, like our admin office. We would be a test pilot to test it through to see if it's working as it should before it gets pushed out to all of our staff and students and our general population. You know, Tony, is there any other components of that that I missed? To share that, I guess?
Oh, the network, you know, basically branches off like fingers to everything, and you really can't change it over all at once. So we're going to be doing it in phases. We're going to start with small little pilots and change people over, and then expand from that. And then the summer is when we'll, you know, expand to students and teachers. So you really can't cut off. You really can't cut everything off until you pretty much design from within. So we're going to start small, keep everything operating, and then during the summer we'll do the forklift maneuver and change things over. But that will probably take most of the summer as well. During the summer we won't have as many support hours required. Rebecca and I will handle most of that. But we'll be sporadically using, you know, expertise when we need it.
I know just as it referenced the support hours that were purchased from Skyward in the past, a few years back, we had a purchase contract with Skyward for like 120 hours of support. So it's not uncustomary for us to purchase hours for support for different projects. At that year, that was appropriate for the work that was to be completed during that year. I think that was 2005, 2006, when we were going into Novell. That's probably when that was being developed within there.
It sounds like we're being asked to make a decision on estimate of $100 to $120 an hour. Is that one person, two person?
It'll initially start out with 2 people, but Skyward's the only one that's looking at charging you $120 for 2 people. The other firms charge you for 1 person a higher rate.
And there's no discussion on the hours at this point. I've heard the word in the budget. What's the budget amount for this?
Well, we've identified it in phases.
Okay.
And we're supporting it on a week-to-week basis with Skyward, and we'll identify that process as we go forward. But as far as the total, the line item, we haven't identified the total number yet. You know, we don't know exactly how many hours we'll need from Skyward.
Put yourself in my shoes. I see paper in front of me that says $100 to $120 an hour. Doesn't mean much to me. Doesn't know how many people, doesn't know how many time. And I have no information on how many hours. And I have no information on how much the budget is that we are in the budget. And yet a decision is being asked to me. How do I make that decision?
Well, no decision is being made tonight. Tonight
Okay.
we're communicating out what the plan of attack is with that. In our conversation with Skyward, we looked at budgeting, was it 40 hours initially to set that first threshold, and we would carry out through that 40 hours and, okay, this is where we're at, okay? Now, the next step, what does that next step look like? Do we need another 40 hours or not? And then that billing cycle, that amount of hours would be requested to support that next phase of it. So our first number is approximately, I think it was 40 hours that we're looking at for our service support.
But that could be multiple times of 40 hours.
Oh, I anticipate that it will be more than one time. Right. But we won't know that until we get into it and finish the first phase and see where we're at.
42 school districts in Cesa, 39 of them are using it. Have they all changed recently? Have they all been started with it originally? Is there assistance from any of those school districts or Cesa in this process?
I'll let Tony answer that question. I know that we are working with Manoa right now as well. Their IT person, Dwayne, is working with Tony to communicate back, because Manoa currently is a Microsoft platform.
Right.
And so using some
The
of those
scenario I
tools-
see is if Tony has this mastered in 2 years from now, and the last 2 people in Cesa have to change, would Tony go help them? You know, what kind of interconnections do they have, that kind of thing?
Right.
You know, if 39 people are already doing it, the Skyward the only one that can teach it.
Right. Manoa was at our meeting on Thursday. We had Dwayne over as well to assist in that conversation. I don't know if there's any other feedback from other districts on your tech meetings within that.
Well, over the last 3 years, this transaction has been slowly happening. It's better to watch the market and see where it's going before you just kind of jump into it. I've seen a lot of the technicians at times find a good deal and jump into it, and then they have 2 to 3 years worth of headaches, and more or less like this sit
How
back
long ago
and-
did we team up or use Novell?
Novell started around 2005.
And that was replacing what?
That was replacing the platform of Microsoft at that time. Microsoft was probably around that time, Novell was right around $3,000 a year. Microsoft was right around $28,000 a year just to buy the network license every year. And then slowly Microsoft has come down from that. So 5 years ago, Microsoft came down to $14,000 a year, and Novell came up to around $5,000 a year. So that margin keeps getting closer and closer, and now we're kind of at the point where the transition is probably appropriate for me. Novell used to be the cheapest. Why all the schools were on it at that point in time is just because that was the cheapest operating system, and there was a lot of support for that. Now that whole curve is changing the opposite way.
Well, the scorecard looks 39-3 in Cesa.
Right. So Cesa now has 39 Microsoft and 3 Novell. So that's what's really changed between.
But it's difficult to see what I would say an unknown total cost. It's difficult.
Well, I'll say that, we're trying to take a market approach to this, and there's one way, there's two options that we could do. We could pay Cesa or Skyward to come in and do this and be done with it. But the other option is to make sure that Tony's trained on how to run this and operate this himself. So there are going to be certain phases that Rebecca and Tony can handle with a little bit of guidance. So instead of spending 40 hours of consultant time to have them plugging away at the keyboard, maybe they can take an hour or two and train them how to do it, and then they can go, and then we'll come back in 2 weeks and see where we're at.
And the business practice with the other consultants is kind of want to say, put the carrot out in front of you, but you never get to learn the new technology that they're using, so that they always have to come back and retrain you. Where Skyward and a place out of Madison are more or less providing a solution and making sure it's a turnkey solution, so the people that are running the network can operate that network after that transition's been made. And that's where I see the most key importance, is that I don't want to be calling somebody every time something goes wrong with the network. I want to be able to do that myself.
So how many hours are we approving?
Excuse me?
How many hours are we approving at this point?
We're not.
No, I know we're not at this time, next.
The first, I made a request to Skyward for 40 block hours to support the first phase and see where we're at within that.
Ballpark guess, $100
$100,
total.
it'll probably pushing, it varies from district to district and how much Tony can support the building of the platform. That was their statement. What we can do within will bring down the hour cost.
We're working with Manawa. I got a good foothold on the start where I feel I can get the first phase done probably in April, probably probably 2 weeks, get the first phase done of it. And that's basically due to not only from Manawa, but from Cesa 6 and other people that are already in the other school districts already have been using Microsoft and switched over. So they're also key resources as well. But when it comes to the forklift part of it, you really need somebody that's the expert, that's done this school after school after school after school, and not somebody that, tackles this once every 5 years.
I guess my question is, next meeting we'll be asked to vote on this, right?
Potentially, yeah, so that's right.
And how will that be worded? I mean, will it have a specific number of hours in, or will it just say technology service hours?
I guess we would recognize the purchased hours, the per hour cost in which we would be needed. If we need hours of support, it would be coming at that rate of hours.
I mean, in the past, we usually bought 100 hours a year. And that was roughly $20,000 a year. So this particular year, it could be 120 hours or a little bit more than that.
Any further questions on that one?
Probably just a general comment. As a board member, I'm giving one option, and I either have to agree with it or disagree with it. I don't feel I have any decision-making choices. And I'm wondering if we couldn't fix that, or massage that to a point where these are some choices. We look for a group of people to help us with those choices. So many times I'm sitting here and it's like, this is it, and we're all have already predetermined this is what we want. You either thumb it up or thumb it down. And if you question it, you get hammered. And that's just not a good way to operate around here. That I think we as a group should be able to make choices, and we're not being given choices. That's what I'm worried about.
Heartland's at $200 an hour. Camera Corner's at $150 an hour. Madison's at $200 an hour. So it's hard to give choices when those guys are so darn high.
And that's not in front of me. So this group, I think, has determined that and brings this up, and this is all I see. And I don't see any choices. So I feel like I just have to say yes because I can't question it because it's already been predetermined.
And I guess
It's not a real workable arrangement.
I guess that's part of our job to bring forth the best solution.
Then I feel like all my job is here is just whatever comes forward, I better say yes, or I'm going to get hammered.
Well, I know that's not the case,
It's a challenge.
but that's what we want to bring forward, the best choice for the board to consider. So that's how we are operating, but
But if I'm not aware if there was any choices made, I'm only given one.
we can communicate out the hourly choice for the board to look at then, next week. I'll do that.
It's not this particular topic. It's
Would it
all
be-
the topics in general. How
Would
that-
it be helpful if we brought forward our decision-making process and how we arrived at that?
I think something would help me from either saying, this is being brought forward, I don't have the background how it got here, either thumb it up or thumb it down, but don't you dare question it.
Well,
That's how I feel.
I don't know if I should say. I mean, I call stuff to the and stuff. I talked to him for about a half hour,
Mhm.
you know, 'cause I had a lot of questions on this.
Right.
He answered most of my questions. It's not, you know, I maybe don't agree with it all, but I mean, if you ask questions, they'll tell you.
Right, and that's what I thought committees would do, would
Well, I
discuss it.
mean,
So a little bit more detail on this, I see that. But at the same time, they're hired to do a job, to do their job and present that to us. You know, I trust them to make the best decisions and recommendations to us to approve, whether or not we see all the different options. I mean, granted, yet we have seen, you know, it's 120 versus 150 versus 200 versus 200. Obviously, and we've worked with Skyward a lot. I know it's a no-brainer, but
I had questions on almost every one of these. You can call and ask.
I would do that.
You know, it would save us a lot of time. So I kind of had, you know, the same questions, why, how come, and I mean, we worked with, I mean, Heartland, we've had a lot of bills from, before Heartland always took care of it. Like you said, you're gonna pay mileage, you're gonna pay something. So, but I think a lot of this stuff, you know, that you were talking, I shouldn't talk about it now, but I mean, a lot of this stuff can be taken care of if you just ask questions before. Not beating up on it.
7.3, Weyauwega Elementary Computer Lab, A, construction bid appropriate, B, network cabling for lab bid appropriate.
Again, we had some preliminary discussion about this, the lab creation within the elementary school. Tony and Wes Rader, Maintenance and Grounds, and Mr. Nowak have worked on configuring the general range of what this project will cost. And as we move forward, these two projects, noting it's a construction and cabling project, individually, both of them are slightly different. We would look at developing RFPs to support each phase of this process. And through the sealed bid process, because it's more inclined with the contractors to come in and develop that and present who and what would be our best contractor to carry us through on this process.
And this is an example, if my understanding is right, the music room in the grade school is being considered to be a computer lab. It has no outside walls and no windows, nor is it air conditioned. The music room will then move, I believe, into the middle school where it is air conditioned. And my question is, why is this decision being made like it is? Or would it make sense to put the computer lab where the music room is going to go and leave the music room where it is? Because then we're air conditioned already. And how that process got to where it is without discussion by decision with the school board.
That was brought up once.
I mentioned it because I've had comments made to me that, putting the computer lab where it is has a couple of issues. One is no windows, no air conditioning, and a brand new roof. Are all those things into consideration when that decision is made? Or is it, this is convenient and there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences and we'll deal with them down the road rather than dealing with them all now and say, you know what, maybe it would make more sense to put the computer lab in the air-conditioned portion where there's not a new roof, because some unintended consequences are already been eliminated. And that portion isn't being discussed at committee level, and I don't know why. It comes to us predetermined with a lot of unintended consequences potentially that we're going to then have to deal with. And
But it's on the agenda to discuss it right now, and we're talking about it.
And this
Right.
has been on the agenda before, I believe we talked about it, did you not?
Couple times.
has anyone answered the question about no outside walls, no windows, brand new roof, no air conditioning, and why this decision is made, and are we aware of all the potential unintended consequences? That's what I'm asking.
Tony, what's the size of or Scott, I'm not sure, the room size, does that have anything to play in that? Why that was discussed that way, to fit all the computers in there?
Well, one of the primary decisions of having it in the elementary is that it's the elementary, it's across from the INC, it's proximity. Granted, where it potentially could be in the middle school is, I guess, relatively close, but it's across the hall from an existing computer lab within the elementary piece of it. The air conditioning piece, Mr. Schrader is investigating that as we speak as to what that would cost to have a penetration through the roof to insert a unit for that. That's a standalone item that potentially would come forward as well as part of this process.
Did
As far as
the
con-
new roof go on that section? I don't
Yes, it
think
did. Yep, that new section has, or that, where that is covered, it is under the new section.
Okay.
It's right next to the middle school.
Okay.
Candy?
Primary decision, I think, was priority one for us was the common school library funds. Usually when we come forth with a capital project like that, a question from the board is usually, how are we going to fund that? And the only way we're able to fund the lab is by having it be adjoining the library or in proximity of the library, because we're using the common school library funds.
Those computers from Fremont are coming down to this lab within
Right.
that.
So I understand what you're saying, Mr. Lurky, about some unanticipated costs, but the bulk of the costs in the computer lab is the computers, and that's where we're saving the money.
Right. And from a discussion standpoint, to say the computer lab has to be there because it's elementary, but the music room can move out of the elementary. I could argue, no, the music room needs to stay in the elementary because it's elementary. The computer lab can move where it's air conditioned.
You certainly could.
You know,
It might be the perfect item that gives the long-range facility group,
Thank you.
the
That's
engineers to take a look at.
Just what I was
'Cause
thinking.
I call it barn blind, but I only go in our barns 3 days a week, and I see everything that's broken, and the guys that are in there every single day, 8-hour shifts, they don't even notice it anymore because it was broke yesterday, it's broke today, it's broke the next day. I go in there 3 days a week and I write down a list of stuff that's broke for our maintenance guys. It's a perfect opportunity to use these people who might do that.
I guess I would think that too, when doing this long range planning, this is the perfect thing to look into.
Yeah.
You're not going to build it tomorrow, are you?
we need to get going. We need to get
Well,
we're looking at the summer.
See, that's-
next year.
See, that's.
And it's been in
That's-
discussion
that's-
since
I mean,
It's been in discussion, he's brought it up before.
yeah.
It's been part of the IT meetings probably for the last 5 months. And,
It was on our agenda once.
right, it's been on our agenda two other times prior to this.
And I guess my question is, at those IT meetings, was the no windows, no outside walls, brand new roof discussed and its intended, the potential unintended consequences without having that being part of the discussion?
Yeah, we looked at, 3 different rooms, 2 in the elementary and 1 in the middle school, and I guess size was the most important part of it, trying to get enough in there.
I mean, I think a pretty big determining factor was Martin said, funding, obviously the biggest portion of it. One piece.
Are you
that-
saying it would not be funded if it went around the corner where the music room's gonna go?
The board appreciates grant funding or anything that we can do where we're not dipping into Fund 10, so it's usually bring up a solution, not a problem, and we're trying to bring a solution, and this is our solution. So I understand what you're saying about facilities costs, but we feel the computer costs would greatly outweigh the facilities costs if we didn't have that funding for the computer.
My question is, will the funding be available if it went around the corner to the?
No, because it wouldn't be connected to the library.
We would have,
It wouldn't even be in the same building as the library.
we would have to support that construction ourselves.
What is the definition of connected to the library, I guess? I'm confused.
Well, certainly in the same building to start, but you know the answer to that, Russ, as far as the funding.
Across the hall sounds like it counts, but down the hall doesn't.
The impetus of that rule is that it's for items in the library. So rooms connected to the library would count. And we can get an absolute definition to keep guys.
I know I sound terrible here, but we're paying for that long-range study. And having taught in that elementary school a long time, I would say that's not the only one that should be air conditioned.
So what is, Sandy, I'll take it one step forward. If we move it forward and we say, all right, we want to look at it through the long-range study to the best placement configuration as to where it should be, how does that affect us this next year with what we're expected to do, unless the state tells us we don't have to do the assessment as we know it on the computer? Does that put us in a bind as far as having the space configurations right now with the timelines that are established?
Right, the technology committee has been planning for the Smarter Balance test. We knew this was coming for 4 years. For the last 2 years, we've been counting computers around the building and developing schedules when we would have enough, because there's also a testing window with this. We have to get this entire test done for all the students in the district that are required to take it within 3 weeks. And the greatest deficit we noticed was in Weyauwega Elementary School. So that's why we proceeded forward with the tech committee and adding an additional computer lab there. And then, of course, bring a solution. What is the solution? The use of the common library funds by putting the computers in Fremont and recycling the old computers from Fremont. So we thought this was the solution. And
I totally agree with you. It's just when we heard those presentations, you're always, wherever you start something new.
I think it got everybody thinking 2 weeks ago
Right.
about.
Yeah,
I think
it's
I even
it.
heard
You
her
heard
say
the
that
presentation.
that computer labs are not even something of the future.
Right.
I think she may have said that.
Yeah.
I watched the video.
Yeah,
But
watch the
I think
video.
that she may have mentioned that
Yeah.
they're more mobilized than.
But I
Yeah.
understand
Go to
your
the
immediate
computer
need
lab.
too. So,
Exactly, it's like immediate need.
I would feel bad if we did something and then they come in and say, hey, I don't know.
So Candy and Doug, from a configuration standpoint, could we facilitate the Smarter Balance in reading, language arts, and math next year with our current configuration?
no, and the only other grant and free money I have generated out there for this project is Tony and I put forth an additional grant from CenturyLink that we haven't heard the results back, but that's only $8,000. So I don't know how far $8,000 is going to get us, but I am continually looking and writing grants for the district to try to pay for these things that we're bringing forward. And this was the solution that I was.
I totally understand,
Mhm.
you know.
You know, if,
You know,
if the lab, if the lab is going to go forward, I mean, it's a big if, I guess, or whatever. The room that we were looking at, and it doesn't have outside windows and things like that. That was, looking at what was available, that was one of the reasons for me, anyway, why I thought that would be the best room, because the kids are in there for more of a limited amount of time than if it was a regular classroom.
I know that.
You know, I mean, if it was if that room was going to be used for a regular classroom, I prefer, the option of have windows. But if it was
When
a
I
music
heard,
room, they're not in there, it's not a regular classroom either.
when
My
I heard
other-
this presentation, I mean, I envision where they might come in and say we should make that whole new part of the library or whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
you
you never know.
they might make some changes or,
Well, that doesn't mean we're gonna do it.
no, but.
I know, but I mean, like Mrs. Martin said, she has the grant, you have to use it. You can't go write a grant and say, now we're gonna change it, you can't do that.
Well,
You want to throw in jail, you can do that.
There is some concern about location too. For example, we have a computer lab in the high school adjoining the high school tech ed room. The third graders could theoretically walk through the elementary, walk through the middle school, walk down into the high school tech ed hallway and take their test down there. But that would feel like a
That's
field
not
trip.
good.
There would be grinding and sawing in the background. And we rely so much on these students' test scores for other things that our district is rewarded with. I don't think that would be a conducive testing environment. We want to keep them where they know they're home. It
well, I guess
produces
the
best
only
test
thing I can
results.
say, and I'll probably go along with this, but I think it's important to do this long-range plan. 'Cause
But, yeah, like Mr. Nowak said, they're not gonna be in there 24/7,
yeah,
so.
yeah, we always do family before.
And a lot of this other stuff goes along with that, so are we gonna sit and talk for 20 minutes on each little?
I don't know.
I'm gonna say,
Okay, the next item then, the Microsoft project hardware, to support that platform change, it's gonna, as Tony referenced, it's gonna support a licensure piece between that $5,000 and $10,000 bid. So when that would be completed, we would need to support it with licensing. So we see that as a potential purchase to accommodate the new platform. iPad purchase for Fremont Weyauwega Elementary. I had a conversation with Mr. Cole today about iPads and how they're being utilized within our district and where we're at. Currently, we got 113 iPads in our district. Okay, 49 are student iPads, and approximately 64 are support staff and/or staff that utilize them within. The need that Rebecca Hesco and Mr. Nowak are communicating is within that elementary. Currently, get the numbers straight here, if you got them down. Fremont has 15, and Weyauwega has 24. Okay, and they would like to complete out the cart in Fremont, bring that up to 30, complete out the cart in Weyauwega, bring that up to 30, and then within our ESL program, disseminate out some additional support for our students within, bringing that to the approximately 30 iPads for the district. The carts hold 30, okay, and right now they're not holding that in. As far as usage, I'm told that in the elementary, they're burning them up. They're using them very often within the classroom. They're probably more practical in the elementary setting right now than they would be as a hands-on tool within the middle school or high school, because it's the look and feel of an application that students can relate to. So we'd be looking to complete those carts for that.
I guess my main concern, we have rotation with the,
Yeah.
I talked to you about
Yep.
that too, you know.
I asked Rebecca about that. I said, how do we cycle down? And she said every iPad that we have purchased, if it is not broken or destroyed or, let's say it's irreparable, is still in use, okay? And I said, so if I'm buying an application today for an iPad that's 5 years old, is that still going to talk with it? Is it still going to mesh? And as of now, yes, it is. There may come a point in time where new applications don't communicate with older iPads, and at that time, they may be obsolete. But right now, they're still actively being supported within the usage.
Well, I would just turn them in.
Yep.
We do it the other ones. I
Yep. one was the Skyward services. Annually, the board approves our Skyward agreement. 2 modules that we're looking at, including this year, more of an FYI, or Skylert, which you've had some conversations about, and it's more of a mass communication system, school closings, cancellations, important announcements via electronic phone messages to families. A lot of districts surrounding our area utilize that. And then the second piece is looking to enhance our finance payroll piece with I think it's what we call True Time.
True Time or Veritime, depending on which one.
Okay, and what that is, right now, our support staff electronically puts in their time in, time out at the beginning and the end of the day and during lunch, but it's a standalone system. Going with the Skyward model, it would automatically roll the information into our finance portal, which would streamline the process not only for our administrative team, but within the accounting and payroll when we pay out. It would look very much probably similar to our existing Skyward configuration and how our staff currently use it. So we're looking at those 2 items and implementing for next year.
You talk about 6. You can kind of combine that with the Microsoft project hardware.
The licensing?
I'm sorry. Yes, I did. Number 4. Okay, that was the hardware. All right, I apologize. In the process of the upgrade, as communicated, there may be identified some switches, okay, to support the system upgrade. And Tony had 6 switches, I think it was, that potentially could be upgraded throughout the district.
We have roughly 4 switches.
4 switches that may need upgrading to support the information to go out, especially out in the elementary with this.
One switch for sure is for the
with the elementary lab.
Yeah.
And what a switch is when the information comes to it, that takes it out to the individual unit. So one switch may access 30 desktops or 30 laptops. So with the upgrade, we'd have to make sure that our system switches are capable of supporting our end users. Thank you for reminding me of that. I did oversight that. The licensing piece is the part number 6, which references the new platform and the cost to attain that.
I'm going to go back to the computer lab for just a second. In my review of these words and numbers, I don't see anything that totals up. In other words, the total construction, total computers, total potential air conditioning, the moving, to the moving the music room, that type of stuff, for a total. And whether it's a need or a want, whether we can live without it or not, whether our money spent on teachers would be better so we're educating children rather than testing them. Those are some of the things that aren't in front of me that makes it difficult for me to just sum it up without discussion.
Any other further questions on the potential projects itself?
I think can I just say, I think there were some prices listed on this page here.
Right. So do you have a handle on what the computer lab's going to cost?
No, I just said I
Neither
think
do I.
there were some
That's my point.
listed in there, what the construction cost would be. And you said the computers were being paid for with a grant?
Well, they're,
The common school library funds.
the computers from Fremont are coming down to
Okay.
this new lab.
Right. And the air conditioning, the roof repair, those type of things are not in there.
Fremont Elementary IMC Computer Lab bids.
Okay, board members have in front of them the vendors which submitted electronic bids for our computer lab, which will be going into Fremont Elementary, in which our common school library funds will be supporting the funds that are already established within this year's budget to bring that in. The purpose of my conversation tonight is twofold. The first is to identify, through some of our previous discussion on the type of bids that we get, we have multiple bidders that want our business in the process in which we put out for them to respond, and you can see that. And for the most part, it's fairly competitive, as far as within the final price. The part that I'm disappointed in, that I'm going to recommend that this goes back to Tony for consideration, is I think we can do better than this. Okay, our anticipated cost was under $30,000. Okay, and I don't personally want to support it with the numbers that are being generated right now. So I would ask Tony and Dan to take this back and reconfigure the potential purchase and let them know that we need something better. Okay. So this will be coming forward again with new numbers to represent that potential computer replacement within Fremont Elementary.
Oh, wow,
Exactly. That was, you know, I will say this, we are creating a unique workstation, okay? We're creating a workstation that has a laptop, okay? But then in front of it, it has a screen, and then as well, a keyboard. So in the IMC, this laptop with the screen and keyboard is the hard drive, okay? And students will sit down and it'll look like a traditional standalone computer. But what we want to create is some flexibility as well, so that if the third grade class needs laptops within, they could go grab this laptop, open it up, take it down to the classroom, and they can use it. So that's the uniqueness of this configuration, which may, understanding, add a little more cost to it, but what we're gaining in flexibility, kids don't have to come down to the IMC to use it every single time. That unique instruction within the classroom can be taken to the classroom if appropriate. So that's what we're looking to create. Whereas in Weyauwega, where we have more workstations, more availability, potentially with our lab, that configuration isn't warranted with that. So this will be coming back with a sharpened pencil from our vendors.
So if I do the PDS recommendation, you have 34,500 some change divided by 30 units. Is that the right math?
Yes, 30, quantity was 30 units.
Correct. Yeah, $1,162 each.
Right.
Thank you.
That's why we're having this conversation.
How come you only have 24 monitors, or you only have 24 then?
Right, because the existing lab within Fremont has 24 workstations in the IMC, so they won't have, all 30 won't have the sit and feel of a configuration of a standalone workstation.
7E, 2014-15 draft calendar.
A draft calendar is presented to the board for consideration, discussion, to look at. The administrative team spent some time over the past month configuring it, as well as communicating with staff on feedback of the calendar. I highlighted in the narrative some subtle changes from this past year. Well, by law, we have to schedule 180 days of calendar days, instructional days, as well as meet obligation and minutes per elementary, middle, and high school. But more so, we meet our minutes. It's the days where we could potentially run short. This year's an example. Out of that 180 days, we use 6 days for inclement weather. So thus, we have to make one up. The recommendation coming forward incorporates 182 days of instruction, which would allow for 5 potential inclement weather days this next year. If we do not need them, great. Then our students will be in school 2 days longer. I think it works within the end result of when school is dismissed on June 5th, the Friday, similar to what it is this year. A modification around that spring break, Easter time frame, depending on how you describe it, would be that the students families would have an Easter holiday the Thursday, Friday, Monday versus the entire week in which we're referenced this year. Other than that, the calendar itself mimics it very closely as to what it was this past year. Another note on the lower right-hand column, there's a statement stating that if we have to make up days, those days will be picked up within our calendar holiday days to accommodate that. So, questions, feedback?
I don't know if I'd mentioned designated holidays. People might start to think you're mentioning vacation, what do you call them?
Something other than holiday?
Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
what the found days
Okay.
are. Did you also see in the paper tonight that they are considering a law where people can extend the time?
Extend the school year so it doesn't have to confine to the,
The length of the day.
oh, okay.
It was just in the paper tonight.
Okay, I did not see that yet, but I know there's been talk at the legislative level to adjust that.
So we should keep informed about them.
But
Vacation days, well, I don't know, holiday sounds like Christmas to me. but
Sure,
it is
I could
Christmas.
find a new word
It
there.
just does.
Yep, I agree.
Vacation,
I agree.
vacation, doesn't
Non-
mean vacation days?
Non-calendar, I don't know, I'll come up with a different
You'll
word
come
to
up with
describe that.
something. Scott, I trust you.
Well,
Here, it's a holiday.
I agree with your
That sounds
comment, though,
like
that
it's, you know, Thanksgiving.
They are.
I know, well, yeah.
I think it comes down to you don't want to offend somebody with
Well,
how it
giving
is.
you holidays, Easter, Christmas. I don't know.
I'm just one, but my vote would be to not have the days off in April and not go into June. It's just me.
I think Good Friday should be all for sure.
If we were to do that, we would be dismissing on, we'd have to try to find some other dates. Because if you took those 3 days, the Thursday, Friday, and Monday, that would back us up to, we come back for Monday, Tuesday. June 2nd would be our final day, the way it's configured now. We'd have to capture the potential
Yeah,
days
Monday,
somewhere else.
Thursday, Good Friday.
You have to have one.
Yeah,
That's Easter.
that's Easter.
The holiday.
Yes. That's church night.
I mean, you put an extra 2 days in there. So, I mean, you just have 180, and you got 182.
Potential approval at the end of the month here at our meeting. And again, if it is approved, Mr. Schrader's not here, him new being this year.
He
we-
is here.
There
Talking.
it is. It's talking about you. We would communicate with him to send out that letter to our seniors for next year, this year's junior class, to identify their graduation day and what they see fit, whether it be Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So that can be communicated and set, and Sandy, the Alumni Association, can zero in on their day.
They'll be calling you.
Right.
Thanks, Scott.
You are.
7F, 2014-15 CESA 5 service contract.
The CESA 5 contract is something we look at annually. This supports the Weyauwega County Charter School, which is at our old middle school, and which is ran through CESA 5. And just a brief storyline of what this charter school does again for us. The majority of our schools, districts within the county support this by membership. Our district supports 2 seats within the district. It's designated and designed to support middle school age at-risk students that aren't finding success within the traditional school setting. The goal is for these students to go to this school, to work on the skill set, the functionality of being able to communicate and work efficiently with their peers, and then integrate back into the high school setting when they are freshmen. We have had several students that have successfully completed this and transitioned back. I can think of a young man that I was talking in the hallway today that attended this, that this was just what he needed to have him be successful. The cost of our 2 seats, or this would be turned to the third to last page where it talks about the 14-15 estimated cost. There's 3 columns that I'd like to explain that. We're going to go in reverse order. The estimated total cost, okay, for our 2 seats is $31,010. And what that, you split that down the middle, you have 15,000 or a little over 15,000 per student for that seat. The cost of our district to educate a child this year is a little more than $9,000. When our budgets are broke down, that's typically what it's recognized at. So the cost of this is more than our traditional tuition for a student, but it's the proper environment. It's the environment where the students will learn those skill sets to hopefully find their way back into the traditional setting. The anticipated aid is just that. It is anticipated. Historically, the aid has come in, but it's funded through our different grants and entitlements, which come back to us as relief in our total cost. And then the third number, the estimated local district net cost, is $25,679.58. If our aid anticipation comes back as expected, the cost to our district would be $25,679. Okay, But far as the budgeting and the communication piece remaining transparent, CESA must communicate out the 3110 number to us in our agreement. If for instance, the aid does not come back, this would ultimately be the number that we would look to configure. And to follow this up with, we host the charter school, we maintain the building, the facilities. Our annual rent, which we charge CESA 5, is $27,000. And I told Frank Wallenberg when I was talking about this proposal last week, I said, Frank, when you guys exceed 27,000, or when we potentially exceed 27,000, the rent's going up. So for our district, it makes sense in that configuration. Candy purchases an additional seat through special ed fund as a floating seat, if appropriate, to support from within her domain within special ed. We'd look to bring this forward for the annual approval at the end of the month.
What was the number last year?
Mr. Storch, you didn't happen to have that number, if you mind that, I don't have it with me, Neil, that last year's number.
I think we had 2 seats last year.
I could follow up with it, Neil.
I don't think there's a change in the price.
Scott, are we going to increase the rent?
No, the recommendation wasn't to increase the rent this year, no.
Okay.
It was to remain the
We're coming
same.
out $2,000 some ahead this year.
Okay.
Dan, if you could follow up with that number and send it to Mr. Bucky or all board members on that for the last year's fund. All right, awesome.
7G, 2014-15 revenue limit projections.
All right, for discussion. All right, when we get into the month of April, we'll be presenting a preliminary budget for discussion in general knowledge insight of where our district is performing at. As we know, over the past several years, in this planning phase is what I'll call it, as far as our revenue limit and what districts get, it's probably one of the most inefficient methods that the state puts out, but these are the tools we get to work with. True numbers that ultimately will tell us our revenue limit aren't given out until August 15th, when the tax levies and the assessed values are officially determined. But until then, we're empowered to develop budgets, remain frugal, and be within our limitations, not only for our district, but our taxpayers. So as we develop our budget from now going forward, as we do annually, we use the numbers they give us. So within our revenue limit projections this year, just to go through the bar graph, or the graph in which was put together, the biggest number or factor which drives our revenue is enrollment. This next year, we're looking at a reduction of approximately 15 students district-wide, okay? 15,000 times, a student tuition of $9,000. Instantly, you can see how that would reduce the potential revenue limit. The one thing, and we had discussions prior to that we've been trending X amount of students each year, and then each year we're receiving, Dan, the name of the term slips my mind, for declining enrollment. Hold harmless, yes, thank you. Hold harmless declining enrollment, where they backfill so that you don't see the true loss of the number of students each year. Well, we have flatlined, okay? For this next year, we've flatlined out where we had 872, 873, 872, and okay, that's great. So they take the 3-year rolling average for our ultimate number of our student count. So now it's very much the same. So we won't see that hold harmless piece roll into our aid formula. One saving grace, if you will, and it's not necessarily, it's just stating that we see that 15 student reduction, that we will see some hold harmless aid come back into the formula, but it won't be as significant as what it once recognized when we were dropping, 15, 20 students each year for where now we plateaued. End result, we're looking at a revenue shortfall for this next year of approximately $287,025. That's with the known factors right now, okay? And things that we will look at to meet that is obviously through our budget development, okay, working with individual budgets. We're going to be talking about some of our healthcare choices and options coming up and how we fund that. Okay, there's just be some potential flexibility in how we address that as well. Dan, what am I missing on this piece? Anything from your perspective?
I think I would just reiterate, that this is the beginning stages, and if you recall, when we had our annual meeting, we kind of projected out that this was going to happen, with our enrollment trends. The budgets, the building level budgets and department level budgets are gonna be flowing in real quickly here. And then it's my responsibility to put that together, and we'll meet as an admin team and try to figure out, how to make that balance, because, and it will balance. So that is a requirement, and we'll make that happen.
You know, and it's, I can see how it'd be difficult, because I struggled with this when we talked about the spending for purchases, you know, coming up here and what we'd like to accomplish, and then we have to follow this up with, okay, deficit budget projection for this next year, as far as the revenue limit from this previous year. That's not uncustomary to what we've experienced over the last several years. We still need to carry out the business and moving the district forward. It's our task now to remediate that $287,000 and, you know, establish a balanced budget, would still meet the needs and still allows us to move forward and progress with what we're obligated to do to our students. So.
You know, one of our saving graces is our self-funded health insurance plan, which generally identifies a surplus for us. You know, so realistically, at the end of next year, you know, do I think we'll have a deficit? No, I do not. I think we'll have a surplus anyway. You know, so, you know, as we continue to tweak those numbers and identify areas of reduction, you know, I think we'll be in I think we're still in a good place financially. We've made sound financial decisions, and I think we're in a good place.
What we'd like to do when we present that budget proposal are some potential options to offset the 287. Okay, so that you can see if we do this, this is the result of that. And obviously that's going to take board dialogue and a direction saying, yes, we want to go that route, or we don't want to go that route. Note that 85% of our budget, 80 to 85% of our budget is salary and benefits and staffing. That's the majority of it. So to make significant changes in a budget where we have drastic reductions, somehow it has to tie into staffing, salary, and benefits. Okay, the building level budgets are pretty minuscule when it shakes down in a $10 million budget, but we'll be as frugal as we can be within those budgets to represent, you know, what we need, what's appropriate for this next year.
I hear the word surplus on the insurance, and am I to understand that our self-insurance, the majority of that money is put in by the district through premiums?
Yep.
And that if it's not used, it then becomes called surplus. And I have concerns about that. It's basically my left hand, put it in my right hand to cover my insurance.
Right.
I don't call that a surplus in my definition of surplus. The other question I have is 15 students times $9,000, and round number, you commented that number earlier, comes out to 135, got my math right. And yet, in your chart, you got minus 15 coming out to 287,000, which is 19,000. Is that all under the whole harmless formula? Because it's a $10,000 difference per student.
The state funding formula is not just based on enrollment. You know, there's other factors in there. You know, property values as well as, you know, the state guarantees, and, you know, if we qualify for, you know, full harmless or declining enrollment. You know, so it's not just a straight line item. You know, this times this equals, you know, less funding.
But naively, you look at 15 students at $9,000.
Sure, I understand.
And 15 students divided into 287,
Right.
it's to be a real big spread.
Well, in the 15 students, it doesn't affect the overall picture as 15 students. It's really divided by 3, so it counts as 5 because it is a 3-year rolling average.
We can talk about that privately, thanks.
This is just potential. This has nothing.
Right.
We haven't even had the budget.
And realistically, what we've done is we've taken the formula sheets that the DPI provides, and we've plugged in what we know.
Right.
And that's identified, you know, this number, which is $287,000 less than what we were given last year.
Right.
And we need to work within those constraints.
So that's basically what it is. We're gonna get $287,000 less. This doesn't really, because we haven't done it yet.
Exactly.
It's right.
So this is what they're
Just preliminary.
our revenue limit in which we can work with will be approximately $287,000 less
As of today.
as of today. Correct.
and it will change.
And it will change. That it will. I'm sure it will.
So the evaluation.
I see all the valuations come out. All right. So this is in our process to help everyone understand the budgeting process and have that voice from the board. This is a critical piece of that puzzle that will lead to future conversations about how we set up for the 14-15 school year.
Item H, posting board meeting videos to district website.
I'd ask that to be on the agenda for discussion. There are YouTube videos and in-house videos that are available, and whether or not they should be on the website or linked to the website is a discussion. I would say I would be in favor of that. And whether it's our in-house video or the YouTube video would be a logistics discussion.
I have no problem with that.
Or both, I guess, the other option would be both.
One or the other.
We've had some internal discussions about how we could facilitate that. And if we were to host them on our website, you'd be looking at a space issue. We've talked about potentially creating our own YouTube channel, as I know you guys have done, and doing something very similar. And it's just a question of whether or not the board chooses to facilitate that. And I think we could handle that internally, or we could certainly use what they're doing.
I'm not up to speed on the logistics of, to link an existing YouTube channel shouldn't give us a space problem, should it?
No, that would be if we were to take our videos and post them internally on our server and say, come to our website and watch the video. Then we would have to store that locally on our server, or we'd have to create a YouTube channel
Or other choices.
or facilitate that through some other type of media.
And I didn't know which way the board would prefer, the existing YouTube stuff, our own, or none of the above, or both. Those are the choices.
I think it's silly to both. You want both?
What,
We can do it on ours.
one of the discussion points would be this. If the school district uses its resources and or its students and does it, it probably has lasting potential. It could still be doing it 5 or 10 years from now. If you rely on a private individual to do it and that changes, does it continue 2 years from now? Do you want it to continue? If we have the technology and or the students and or the infrastructure to do it, should we do it in-house so that it's more reliably done long-term?
Well, I actually agree with you. Probably should be done in-house, nothing against you, but the point being.
The question might be
You
based
get
on-
the point. When you and I are gone, something
Yeah.
else is still maybe.
The question on timing might be, can you do one now? Can you do the in-house one as ASP, as soon as possible? And then, when we're comfortable with ours, say thank you for the other one, or keep them both. Those are some discussions I thought we should have.
I don't think we should rush in, I think it should be done right.
One of the thought processes when I was thinking about this in our last conversation, when we do things, we want to do it to the best of our ability. And, I've watched some of the videos and whatnot, and the sound is always, we're zeroing in, turning it up, this or that. If we're going to invest into the district putting forward something, I would consider a recommendation to look at a sound system, microphones, whether it's a direct feed, that might be a new camera, I don't know, but so that it's not, I can't get my volume up loud enough to hear what it is. I guess whatever we do, I want to do it right within
And
that.
that is true, because
So that's an expense.
I've listened to a lot of these videos, and they are hard to understand sometimes.
That would be the one piece that would have to be
That
looked
is-
into to see
I
how
think
that would work. as far as-
My two suggestions would be just a simple reference on the website to what I'm doing, an explanation and making the community aware of that, which, is a one-time thing where to
A
find
short
it,
term.
not necessarily maintaining it for every video and the link for every video, just a one-time simple. My other suggestion would be to create a class out of it, an audio recording class that students could, use some more professional system to record it more professionally, and
It's very difficult for large folks to get back up and utilize
Ruben, no disrespect on the transparency project, but what does that mean as far as that group or organization? District represents all and everyone. Does the transparency project just represent a certain group of people? That, you know, if we took your clip and put it on there, would that be would that say the Weyauwega Fremont School District supports the transparency project because it's listed through that? That's one of the questions that I'd want to have resolved if we were just to click on yours, you know, no offense, but I mean, that's just because we got to be everywhere, you know, with that.
I'd rather have the actual video on there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that you guys doing that, Phil, because I watched them as well.
Yeah, I watch them.
What do we want?
I think we should
A little
look
bit
in.
of research and
What are you gonna
let
do?
Dan
I
and Tony
think
and
the
Rebecca.
administration should research and see how other districts do it.
Every board, every meeting, or just a regular meeting?
Whatever you want.
Personally, I don't want any.
I think in the end, you're probably not gonna have many people watching them. I don't think it's gonna be the highlight of their night.
We get some pretty big hits.
Yeah.
We need a closed circuit cable network in town.
Yeah.
So we could just, you know, like Weyauwega or New London, you know, they just load them on their cable TV and.
Well, maybe we could,
So investigate systems to support that? Or?
And the cost.
and the cost, yes. We got this
Is there any
long-range
interest in having a link telling that it's available on YouTube?
I mean, I think.
That sounds like a relatively easy potential.
The only thing is I would check with our lawyer just, and you agree,
Yeah,
don't you?
that's,
Because does it look like we're supporting that group then? Why don't you check with
We have links on our school site now that link to other
It's on
things.
for the alumni.
Right. You know, so, you know, where's the line drawn that, yes, we'll do it for this one, but not for that one?
I don't know, are you against alumni or?
No, my point is, if it's good for one, is it good for more than one?
I think it's something you should have.
Let them, let them.
I can
come up with some
shoot Greg an
ideas.
email with that and get his opinion, I guess, as well.
yeah, and I would agree that, you know, we should have a clear understanding of where each other is at.
Yeah, because you wouldn't want somebody else to come on and have comments before and after it.
Yeah.
Good point.
Personnel negotiations. 9, calendar and future agenda items.
Board members, I sent out a communication on the need for expulsion hearing. Unfortunately, there's a need to have a session, hopefully this week, and we're looking at your calendars within the timeline and when the incident took place. The 3 days which could be considered would be potentially Wednesday, Thursday, or Monday. The 13th, or excuse me, the 12th, the 13th, or the 17th. The 17th would be the absolute last day. That would be within our 10-day window where we would need to have that
The
session.
13th, yeah, that's strategic planning meeting.
We do. We start at 5:30 to 6:30. We go 1 hour from 5:30 to 6:30.
I can do Thursday, not Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday's Lenten season now within that.
Yeah, Lent is
Well, it's not,
Wednesday.
I'm sure we could reschedule the final thing if you want.
So,
Could you think of it?
what about Wednesday? Wednesday work or not?
This is Lent.
Yeah. Thursday, you know?
Did you have that?
Nothing on my calendar currently.
Thursday was a potential one, right?
No conflict.
6:30?
It would be 6:30 if that's appropriate. What we have to do is post the meeting for the public, and then Mr. Schrader and Mrs. Martin need to communicate out the time and date with the family. And so that needs to be communicated and accepted of receiving that and recognizing the time.
So that would be a time.
Yes, Thursday at 6:30 would be a time.
And then the strategic planning would be at
5:30. We can meet at 5:30.
Well, that would limit that to an hour.
That's limited. There you go. And that would be in the central office conference room, as in the past. We would need a quorum of the board, so we need at least 4 members to make that happen.
Is
Yeah,
that
they won't.
five?
Okay, great, thank you.
Motion by Dan to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Second by Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Adjourned at WD.
Yeah, go on. Jim found mine on the floor. I thought I had it. I was sure I had it.